Welcome back. There's a whole lot going on in the waters down the Jersey Shore. Hundreds of syringes were found on the beaches from Long Branch up to Sandy Hook, and more wind turbines than we ever imagined are planned for the waters off the Jersey Shore. Here's my interview with Cindy Zipf, Director of Clean Ocean Action. Cindy, as always, thanks for giving us your time today. Everyone was alarmed when they saw the headlines in the New York papers and the New Jersey papers about needles on the shore in New Jersey again. I covered needles on the shore in New Jersey back in the late 80s, so this has been happening for a while. Is this something to be truly concerned about?
Oh, it's always something to be concerned about when we get these major garbage wash-ups. And as you had pointed out, we've been having them for decades. It's been a while since we've had such a pulse of this kind of trash and needles washing up on our coast. It deserves some further investigation as to why, but I think if you look back and reflect on the massive amounts of rain that we had coming into the inner harbor area in our region, there was a huge flush, if you will, of rain, and that usually carries with it whatever is on the streets or whatever is in the sewer systems. So there could have been, all kinds of things that were out on the street and in the storm drains and in the sewers that just got completely flushed into the waterways because it was just such a massive amount of water. Usually what happens is the sanitary guys pick up the garbage on the streets, and the sewer systems treat the sewers as sewage as it goes to the plant. But when you have that much water, there's no treatment. Everything just washed into the storm drains and then into the waterways. So perhaps that was the cause. But the fact of it is that we are very irresponsible with our plastics, with our trash. And we have a lot of infrastructure problems that need to be fixed in the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area, which is why we hope Congress gets its act together to pass the infrastructure funding they're talking about.
We should mention we're talking about an area from, I think, Long Branch up to Sandy Hook, and they're telling people to still be careful, to be diligent when you go in the water, because they believe there may be some needles that are still in there. They found a couple hundred needles already. So let's move on to another topic that I know you're passionate about. You've asked for a pause on the construction of wind farms off of New Jersey. Why?
Well, what we've asked for is a pause on the expansion of offshore wind lease areas. Right now, New Jersey has over 400,000 acres committed to offshore wind development. Much of it is in the southern part of the state, but there's also a tract up off of the northern part of the state. And there are projects that are being proposed. There's one called Ocean Wind, and that project is going through its environmental impact study. And then there's also a couple of others that were just recently proposed off of South Jersey, and they are going through a public comment period. What we called for a pause on is the 800,000 additional acres off the coast of New Jersey that is being privatized, is being offered for sale, for lease, for more offshore wind. And we feel before we go ahead and double the size of the offshore wind area, we should make sure that we're doing offshore wind carefully and with respect to the ocean and the marine life that lives there. We've never done anything like this, and we need to make sure we're doing it right. If we don't, we may expedite the harm to the ocean in trying to help address climate change.
Right. I think that's where people are a little taken back by the whole thing, because on its surface, you believe that wind farms and wind power is good for the environment. And when you have environmental groups pushing back against it, it seems like there is some type of strange conflict there that no one expected. So you're not against the wind power, wind farms. Yeah. You just think it needs more study?
We're not against offshore wind, and we need to have everything on the table in order to address climate change. So we certainly feel the ocean can play a role. The ocean already is playing a role. If it wasn't for the ocean, we would already be cooked, right? Because the ocean is absorbing like 90% of the heat that's been put into the atmosphere since the 1950s. She's also absorbed over 25% of the carbon dioxide that we've been pumping into the air. So she has done us well to help preserve our planet, but you can't do it all. And now it's also impacting the ocean environment. So we do need to develop environmental options to fossil fuels. But what we're saying is that we need to, do it cautiously. We need to make sure that we're not going to be doing harm. And if we are going to be doing some harm, how can we mitigate those impacts? And at the same time, offshore wind is going to take years and years to develop. Whereas we could be doing things right now on land, onshore, with solar power, with wind power, with geothermal power, and most importantly, energy efficiency and conservation. If people want to help the ocean or help the planet, they can become more energy efficient. That's the greenest energy of all. And that puts more green in our wallets too. We're saving money, whereas a lot of these alternatives cost funds. But saving energy is a very inexpensive and the greenest of all the energy sources.
Well, the state is looking at money coming in right now because they just broke ground on a turbine factory for the wind turbines in South Jersey, and more factories are expected to come in middle New Jersey and North Jersey as well. So you're standing in front of a train that's going full speed at this point. It's sounds like these wind turbines are going to happen. The amount of them, though, is stunning. You gave me a statistics before we started the interview that I don't think people are aware of how big it's going to be off of Jersey Shore.
So if you add up the area that's being proposed for lease and the areas that are already committed for leasing, it's over 1 million acres, which is roughly the size of the Grand Canyon National Park. So we're talking about, our entry into offshore wind development is the size of the Grand Canyon National Park, which is full scale. There's been no pilot. There's been no, how do we do this well? How do we do it right? How can we do it better? We'll be kind of going full scale, unless we can try to put some responsible and reasonable controls on the development so that we can protect the ocean's resources as well as, develop the renewable energy sources that we need. And again, I can't emphasize enough that, I would like to see, and I think all of us would like to see the same scope and scale of development of solar energy. Why aren't every stadium parking lots having a covered area of solar powers, or mall parking lots, or rooftops and warehouses? Where is the equal and even greater implementation of renewable energy and energy conservation and efficiency on land? That's right now. We could be doing those things right now. The offshore wind, the facilities that you're talking about are going to take some time. And so we should be doing everything that we can right now on land.
How has your request for a pause been taken so far?
Well, we request the pause when it was announced that they were going to consider adding these areas, and and now the areas are actually being leased. So they took it with a grain of salt, if you will. And, but I think that there are hopefully more and more people will join the call for there to be some rational and responsible implementation of this expansion of offshore wind. There's, the scope and magnitude is huge. And, it would be horrible for us to reflect back on the great American offshore wind boom and lament that we didn't do it correctly, we didn't do it right, and we caused, irreversible harm to the ocean that has even greater consequences.
Would you like to see a legal injunction either by your organization or by some other organizations?
Well, I think there's many options on the table. What we're trying to do now is to urge good governance and to call on those, many of those, practically everyone that's promoting offshore wind is saying, as long as it's done responsibly and reasonably. And we feel that, anyone looking at this from the scope and scale that's being proposed would question that. The other thing that's happening is that, as you know, the state of New Jersey is considering legislation that would, prohibit a community from raising concerns and blocking, any kind of onshore development that might be of cause for concern to them. We're hoping that when people say that, including elected officials, that we want the development to be responsible and reasonable, that, as they evaluate these massive expansions, that they will reconsider the speed and the scope in which they're implementing this, and take their time and do a couple projects, do a project, and see what is the harm that's happening to the ocean? What does happen to the marine life when you put these facilities in there? And how can we mitigate, or how can we actually avoid some of these impacts?
Well, thank you so much. It was eye-opening. I don't think a lot of people realize the extent of the plans, and we will keep in touch with you and would love to have you back.
Thank you so much,
as
Larry.
they continue to build these wind farms. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Cindy Zipf, Director of Clean Ocean Action. Still to come on Jersey Matters.
I'm Phil Anderson. Coming up on Jersey Matters, these two officers of the Princeton Police Department will show us about a new virtual reality program they're using to help their officers out in the field.